Good morning, everybody. Nobody obeyed Ben. Not a single person moved forward. 0 people. Did they? Anybody? Nobody. Nobody. Boo. I say boo to you. Good. I'm just kidding. Good morning. Good to be together this morning. Welcome to Spring Break Sunday. This is when lots of people aren't here, but I'm really glad you're here. And we're continuing in our second week in Lent. Which if you haven't been raised in church, it's the 40 days that lead up to Easter, where we consider the suffering of Christ on our behalf. And so the church historically, throughout thousands of years, has done stuff to enter into that suffering. Different kinds of fasting. And anybody doing anything in particular for Lent in the room? 5 people. Okay, so let me just ask you to consider doing something in this season, like, God forbid, no social media. Think you could do it? Some of you started shaking at the thought of it. You can do it. It can be done. Or maybe no alcohol. Okay, so this is going great. Well, maybe even fasting a day a week, like you have dinner one night and then you don't have dinner till, anything to eat till the next meal. And, I can't see everyone from here, but, maybe skipping some meals might help. And using that time to pray, so it could help in more than one way. So, it's really good for us to join with the church across time. It's good for us to join with the church global in considering what Jesus has done for us, and Lent is a season in which we do that. And so in this series and over this time of Lent, we're going to be looking at what is commonly called the Last Supper discourse. We'll talk a little bit about why people don't necessarily agree with that, but John 13 all the way up to 18 then is the cross, and then again we'll look at the resurrection text in John 20 for Easter. And so we'll be in this series, which is Jesus' last meal with his guys. If you were here last week, we started there in John 13, which it describes how Jesus demonstrated something in the middle of what he was talking about. Do you remember what we talked about last week? Any of you were here? You remember? Yes. It was a demonstration. Does anybody remember the awkward thing we did? Washing of feet. That's exactly right. And I was trying to illustrate for you how awkward that was, how weird it would be to have Jesus do this for them. This was a servant's posture. Somebody should have done this, and nobody did because they were arguing about who was going to be the greatest. And in this service, if you were here, I randomly pulled up Tom White. Just so you're knowing, he was not prepared for that. Just grabbed him out of nowhere, washed his feet on stage. And in the second service, I had Jared Carr. I don't know if Jared's here. Just randomly chose him. So it was trying to illustrate how awkward that was. And it was awkward, at least for them, at least for Tom and Jared. I mean, if you don't think it's awkward, we could just do it again with you now. And that would be weird, right? So it's demonstrating Jesus is showing his love by taking the posture of a servant. From that point, he goes on to continue to talk about betrayal. And they were nervous about what he said in the little bit of dialogue. And so it says that the disciple whom Jesus loved, do you know who that is? It's John. I love this. John refers to himself in this way throughout the gospel. I love that. And by the way, you should try that on. Just start referring to yourself as Jesus' favorite. And that's what he does. And so if you continue in John 13, it says that he leans back against Jesus and sort of whispers to him, "Who is that?" The reason he does that is because Peter asks him to. Because Peter is always doing too much. And so Peter says, "You should ask him." And he leans back and says, who is that? He says, the next person who takes his bread, that's who it is. And it's Judas Iscariot. But just in case, and then Judas gets up and leaves. But just in case that wasn't awkward enough, he turns to Peter and says, oh, don't worry, you are also going to deny me before this night is up. Because Peter says, no, I won't, no matter what. That guy might deny you, but I'm not going to. And you know the story, I assume. He does. So what we come to at this point is they know that something big is happening. They've just entered into Jerusalem. It's a big moment. The whole city's paying attention to them. They're arguing about who's going to be the greatest. Jesus disrupts that by washing their feet. Then he says, that guy's going to betray me. Only to two. It's probably not everyone heard that. And then he looks at what would be kind of his most outspoken guy and says, and you're going to screw this up too. Now you can imagine that this is an unsettling moment. Whatever they thought they were doing just a moment ago, being big deals and famous and important, now feels very confusing. I mean, it would be natural for them to all, one by one, be asking, I wonder what this means for me. This isn't the way it was going to go that I thought it was going to go. Apparently, one of us is a traitor. Another one is a complete failure. Who am I? What am I going to do? And all of a sudden, there's this confusion that's setting in this group, and they have to figure out what's going to happen next. Jesus actually speaks to this in this passage. That's what I want to look at. But I think it's worth pausing just for a moment and asking, have you ever felt like the decisions you've made have led you to a place that don't make sense? Like I've tried to get it right, and then all of a sudden I'm in a place where it doesn't make sense. Like I didn't know what choices to make, but I made the best ones I know how. You and I live in a world right now that have too many choices. You know, if you were living 100 years ago, you had way less choices, like in life. Like you just basically had to do what you had to do to live. But now we live in a world where there's tons of choices, which creates all kinds of decision fatigue in everybody all the time. I mean, 100 years ago, you basically knew what job you were going to have because it was the job your family had. Like, that was your job. I mean, frankly, maybe 100 years ago, maybe a little more than 100 years ago, you were often named by your job. And that's now your job. My name is Baker, so I'm a baker. You know, that's what those names meant. That's why you were named that. And you just were like, okay, I guess that's what I'm doing. My name is Smith, so I am a blacksmith. My dad was a blacksmith. My grandpa's a blacksmith. But now we've built the world in such a way that we look at 18-year-olds and say, declare your major as you go to college. My daughter's trying to figure out which college, which is also excruciating. And then declare your major. I know that you know nothing, but tell us what you think your life is all about now. And then we're going to have you sign on for an ungodly amount of money to figure that out. Now, decide that today, please. That's stressful. I mean, by the way, it just keeps going. You know, basically, you were told what you were supposed to wear based on your station in life. You know, men knew what they were supposed to wear when they left the home. Women knew what they were supposed to wear when they left the home. And now look at you. Look at this smattering of looks. Just look around. Look at whatever this is. You know, how did you decide to be this person? Some of you were like, I live in Colorado. I didn't. One of the things my daughters have learned when they travel is that Colorado people are slovenly. We wear what's comfortable for us, basically. You do show off a little bit with outdoor gear. That's kind of the key, you know, it looks slovenly, but you're like, oh, that's a $1,000 jacket, you know, but you define yourself however you want. Like, you just decide, like, and that's stressful. Like, how did you choose your haircut? How'd you choose that? How'd you choose your hair? Did you choose? Some of you right now, like, I chose when I was 13. And this is where I have lived since then. But others of you, you're like, I don't know, I've been thinking about a new look, and do I have the courage to do that? You know, I wore some new skinnier pants yesterday to play golf, and I was made fun of by multiple people. It's like they're saying, get back in your box, Jay, get back in your box. And I was like, you can't control me. And then I thought, I'm never wearing these again. Okay, so like you, how do you decide what you're going to look like? How do you decide what kind of job you're going to have? How do you decide, some of you are single, how do you decide who you're going to marry? Or date, for that matter? How do you decide freaking anything in a world where you're given limitless options? Limitless. And the amount of anxiety that you experience. Some of you right now are rethinking your look. Come back to me. Some of you are like, that's right, I'm gonna start dressing up. Okay, like, I don't know. I'm just saying the net effect of this is an insane amount of anxiety. And some of you are really confident in your choices. You're like, I think I'm really good at this. I'm doing a very good job. I'm good at my choices. I've got a great career. My life is working. Have you seen my spouse? I am winning. Some of you are like that. You're like, I'm just very good at all of this. Thank you for checking in, Jay. But the problem is, even if you're very, very good at it, there's a set of variables that are outside of your control. Suddenly something happens with your kids. Something happens with your spouse. Your job goes away. And if none of those things go wrong, don't worry, your health will fail you. It's just a matter of time. Something will go wrong in your body. Something will go wrong in somebody's body who is near you. And you're suddenly going to wonder, what am I doing? What are these choices I'm making? The men in the passage that we're looking at thought they were making really good choices, and now Jesus has disrupted everything. This isn't going to go the way you think it's going to go. Some of the people that you thought you were locked in with are not who you think they are. There is no way for you to know what's about to happen next. But you should stop competing with each other. Don't worry. I mean, this is a lot of mixed messages. If you are not in the room today, wondering if you're making good decisions or why the choices you've made have brought you to the place that they've brought you, trust me, someday you will. Every single person gets to a point where they're like, why have I put the people around me I put around me? Why have I made the decisions I've made? Why isn't it working the way that I thought it was going to work? This is an inevitable stop along the way in life. And you can't help but wonder, where is God in that? I mean, I really feel for people trying to even find faith. Some of you were raised in a life with God or in church in a way that you're like, no, a lot of those decisions were made around me and they really helped me. But some of you would be maybe like me. You weren't raised in something called church or within a faith stream. My parents thought they were helping me by just saying, oh, you can just figure it out for yourself. I don't know. That's pretty anxiety producing. How do I know if I'm making the right decisions? How do I know I'm not just a fixture of my culture? Do I have to read everything in order to decide anything? I mean, everything seems sort of like similar. I don't know. Most of the religions are telling us to be nice to each other. Does that mean it's just sort of like a dealer's choice? I mean, most people I meet that are younger, especially in places like America, or if they're educated in a university system, they're thinking they're supposed to compile some kind of faith together. And it creates anxiety. Little Buddhism, some manifesting, a crystal or two. I like this part of Jesus, so I'll have a candle. and then I'll meditate, and, maybe I'll go to church when it feels bad. Something like that. And I'm just compiling some kind of a story of faith. That is really anxiety producing. Super stressful. How do you make these kinds of choices? How do you know you're not just being an idiot? Because the truth is, every single person in this room is making a set of bad decisions right now. Every single person in this room is doing something dumb. You just don't know it's dumb yet. And if right now you're saying to me, I'm not making a dumb decision, that is dumb. That's dumb. Like, every single one of us looks back on our life and says that I made some bad choices. Some of the choices you made that were bad, you were convinced were really good ones. Like, oh, this is a good one. 2 months later, that car, I bought that car? Why did I listen to my uncle? He's an idiot. Why did I do that, right? And anybody? Everybody? By the way, if you don't know this is your problem right here, okay? Like, you have to realize that you're not making wise decisions. Okay, so should we end the sermon here? Maybe we should just end here and pray. Okay, so here's, in this sort of uncertainty with these guys, an uncertainty that I think we all live in, comes the text that was read to you a moment ago. See, because in the sea of uncertainty, I think Jesus offers us hope. And here's the hope that he offers. John 14, verse 1, do not let your hearts be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. My Father's house has many rooms. If that were not so, would I have told you that I'm going to prepare a place for you? And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come back and take you with me, so that you may be where I am. You know the way to the place I'm going. He says, there is a bigger world than you're aware of. There is more happening than you can get your head around. You are not going to be able to take in enough information to know the right decisions to make. The world is too big. There's too much happening. Frankly, there's a world beyond this world that's pressing into this world. And I even know about that one. I'm able to go back and forth. I'm about to show you. I can step into another reality, and then I can step back into this reality. So, you should just trust me. I know what I'm doing. You can trust me. Well, what I love about the Bible is that the people in the Bible ask questions and do things that I would do, because they demonstrate the same kind of stupidity that lives in me. John 14, verse 5. Thomas said to him, Lord, we don't know where you're going. You're saying, like, I'm going somewhere and I can come back and I can take you. I don't know what this is. I don't even know what you're saying. I don't know where you're going. So how can we know the way? You act as though somehow what you're saying makes sense. It makes no sense. You're speaking in a way that is like above my ability to make sense of. How can we know the way? Jesus answered, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. If you really know me, you will know my Father as well. From now on, you do know him and you have seen him. Thomas asked the question that I want to ask, that you would want to ask if you were in that room. And frankly, it's what you want to ask now. You know what would be great, Jesus, is if you just give us a roadmap. Show me exactly the way to where I'm supposed to be. Just show me what to do. Show me how to make the right decisions in the right order and in the right way, and then I can relax. Anybody have that prayer? Just show me exactly what to do. I mean, I appreciate all this like stuff you're saying, but I don't quite get what it means. And so here's what would be helpful. Just tell me what to do and what the roadmap is, and I will do that. Jesus' answer, though it might feel infuriating, is incredibly helpful, and it removes anxiety if you can listen to it. His answer is this: I have no intention of giving you a roadmap. I'm not doing that. What I'm going to give you is myself. I am a trustworthy leader. I am not giving you a map. I'm giving you leadership. I'm giving you my life. I'm showing you a way which is to follow me. Trust me. You don't have to trust all the decisions. Trust me. I'm not giving you a process. I'm saying trust me. I'm not giving you a map. I'm giving you myself. And of course, for those of you that know the story, he does show the way to the Father. He is prepared to suffer and die on behalf of everybody. He raises again. He shows a way through the veil of death even, and yet comes back alive to prove that he knows the way through. And he says, in this way, I am unique to every philosophy, every religious system. Muhammad does not claim to raise from the dead. Buddha does not raise from the dead. None of them do. None of them say, I am the way. Jesus says, it's me. Thomas, I hear that you're trying to figure out of all these options, what are we supposed to do? How are we supposed to act? He says, let me just relieve your burden. Just follow me. I am the way, the truth, and the life. I'm the way to the Father. Trust in me. Follow me. Now, if you hear that the right way, that creates a lot of peace. Because it means out of all the things that I'm trying to figure out, I don't have to know what to do. I can just trust in Jesus. He will lead me. And I know in the world that we're living right now, and I know the main critique of a verse like this is, oh, this is so narrow-minded. It's so narrow. It's so specific. But the truth is, everybody's specific. Everybody's specific. Everybody thinks that they know what they're doing. Everybody thinks that they know the way. The only difference is there's only one person who says, the way is a person that is full of mercy. The way is one who opens a door for anyone and everyone. That far from this being exclusive, meaning it's narrow, it's open to everybody. Here's what's amazing about a life with Jesus, is he vets no one. Everyone's allowed in. Everyone can come to the Father through Jesus. He is radically inclusive. Every other kind of system of religion or faith is really exclusive in that, well, it cuts people out based on their behavior. I mean, the most like hippy-dippy. I have a really good friend who is like, he and I were having a long argument. He's very hippy-dippy. It's like shrooms and weed and everything. And he's like, I think Jesus is great, but everything's great. You know, all the roads work. I go, all the roads work? He goes, yeah, all the roads work. I said, well, how about this? What if you met someone who says, I sacrifice the neighborhood animals in my backyard and burn them alive, and that's my means of worship? He goes, that's evil. I go, okay, so that's evil. So that guy's out. He goes, that guy's definitely out. I go, okay, so he's out. So you've eliminated somebody. He goes, yeah. I go, how many more like this do I have to do? He goes, oh man, now that you say it, a lot of people are out. I go, man, that is so narrow-minded and exclusive. So in other words, I find a way with God if I join your hippy-dippy made-up thing. That's pretty narrow. So some like set of variables, that's pretty narrow. Do you know what my faith says? It says, anyone and everyone who will humble themselves and receive the mercy that's offered in Jesus, they're free to come. I've got to be really honest with you. I'm a pastor. I have wished at times we were more exclusive. Can I confess my sin to you? There have been times I have wished that we were a little more exclusive in this thing called the Church of Jesus Christ. I'm not looking at anyone while I say this. I've thought it's ridiculous that we offer mercy to so many really stupid, horrible people. That is the way of Jesus. That the way in is so wide, it's so generous. Anyone can come. And the dividing line is not behavior or getting it right. The dividing line is, will you humble yourself and receive the mercy that's offered in God through Christ? Will you just yield? Or will you try to do it on your own? Will you be prideful or will you be humble? That's it. And if you can humbly receive this Jesus, there is life available to you, not just in the life to come, but in this life. Because what I love about what happens next, and we'll finish here, is we get dumb question number 2. Verse 8, Philip, who's been great, like all through the Gospels, after he hears this way, truth, the life thing, says, Lord, show us the Father, and that will be enough for us. Okay. Thomas says, we need the roadmap. He says, there's no roadmap, it's me. I'm the roadmap. Come follow me. I'm the way through. I'm the way to live. And Philip, because when you've seen me, you've seen the Father. Philip says, just show us the Father. I really want to believe you, but just like a little more. And I love this. He goes right back at him. Jesus answered, don't you know me, Philip? Even after I've been with you for such a long time, anyone who has seen me has seen the Father. How can you say, show us the Father? Don't you believe that I am in the Father's in me? The words I say to you do not speak on my own authority. Rather, it is the Father living in me who is doing his work. Believe in me when I say that I am in the Father and the Father is in me. Or at least, here it is, believe on the evidence of the works themselves. So you should believe me, but if you're struggling to believe me, look at the evidence of what is happening. There's so much evidence that the power and presence of God is with us. At least believe in those. Very truly I tell you, whoever believes in me, and here it is, this is where it gets interesting, will do the works I've been doing. They will do even greater things than these because I'm going to the Father. And I will do whatever you ask in my name so that the Father may be glorified in the Son. You may ask me for anything in my name, and I will do it. You can ask me for anything, and you will do greater works. Different commentators have argued about what are these greater works. Like, are we going to do bigger miracles than Jesus? Is that the works? Or is it going to be scope? Well, the scope of the miracles go further than what Jesus, he was in this little small area, And the truth is, I think it's both. He basically makes a case that these little group of morons are going to change the world. Here we are, 2,000 years later. You know what? He was right. These uneducated men, under the power and the presence of the Holy Spirit, which we'll talk about next week, have quite literally changed the world. I mean, here we are, thousands of years later, looking at a dialogue that happened on one night. The thing Jesus says here comes to pass. In a very real way, you and I are in an unbroken chain from now all the way back to these 12 men. It's crazy to think that this rabbi from the middle of nowhere, in the middle of nowhere, is killed like a common criminal, and yet this story has changed the way the entire world functions. And it turns out that the thing Jesus said is true, that these men, plus people who have followed Jesus from then to this day, have seen miracles, have seen God do miraculous things, such that they can trust in Jesus in a different kind of way. They can believe that what is said about Jesus is true. It's not just a philosophy, it's not just a set of ideas, but he is a person that we can put our faith in, that we can trust. Not too long ago, I was leading at a meeting where we were talking about how this thing called the Vineyard, which is like 500 churches, could become more racially diverse. You know, if you don't know the Vineyard story, we've been mostly like white, upper middle class, hippie types. Was started in Southern California, and I've been asked, and Danielle and I have been asked to help lead the Vineyard over the last 3 years all around the country, all around the world. And one of the big burdens on our heart is how do we reflect like what the church is meant to be around the world and becoming more racially and socioeconomically diverse. How would God lead the Vineyard to join in that? And that's been, kind of a big task. It's something I've been praying about a lot. Really felt led by God to pray for that and ask for that. And so we were leading a meeting called Better Together, where we were going to make a kind of a case for how the Bible challenges the church to reach outside of their own social demographics and become different. And I've been praying all year for this meeting because I knew it's an important thing God wanted to do in the Vineyard. And the main prayer that I had over and over was, Lord, open our ears that we might hear. Open the ears of the Vineyard that we might hear your Spirit to lead us to be a different kind of movement that could reach across barriers. This has been my prayer for a whole year because I was kind of nervous about this meeting because you may or may not know this. This will probably be news to you. But the U.S. is a little bit racially charged these days. Nobody laughed. Okay, so it's a little intense out there. And so I was like, this could get intense. People are going to think I'm being political when I'm actually just trying to teach the Bible and all this stuff. Okay. So we do this meeting, and I do the opening talk with my friend, Dr. Charles Montgomery, on Acts and how he reaches across these ethnic barriers. Greater works. We'd be a part of something God wants to do. And as I'm finishing the talk, and we go to do ministry time, because that's what we do in the Vineyard, somebody got up and said, I think God maybe spoke to me about something we should pray for. I think we should pray for people who either are deaf or are severely hearing impaired. And I'm going to be entirely honest with you. I was irritated because I just talked about like racial diversity, and these weird Vineyard people always want to pray for healing. And it ticked me off. Like, why are we doing that? That doesn't even relate to what I was talking about. These freaking morons, And I was like, fine, but I just trust the Lord, whatever. So I watch as this woman who I know, who has been like 99% deaf her entire life, a woman named Joyce, who's from Canada. I've known her a long time, like 15 years. I watched her walk up to get prayer. And if you're in the room and you have chronic health issues, you know this to be true, especially in a church like the Vineyard. When we call for healing, you go up and get prayer. If you've done that like dozens of times, it can start to feel kind of awkward, right? And so I saw Joyce walking up, and I thought, oh, Joyce, don't get prayer. No, you know what I mean? Like, are people going to be weird to her? You know what I'm just saying? Like, I just care about her. And I just thought, oh, Joyce, don't do it. And I've known her a long time. Like, she can read your lips, and, so she's good, but I thought, oh, no. Well, anyway, watch her get prayer, and we're in the lobby afterward, and she runs up to me, and she's crying, and I thought, oh, poor Joyce is crying because somebody was weird to her, and she wasn't healed again. And she looks at me, she goes, Jay, I can hear. My ears are opened. And I went, what? She said, I'm telling you I can hear. And I go, okay, well, let's check tomorrow. And she said, stand behind me and talk. And I stood behind her, and I talked, and she just said back to me, here's the things you're saying. And I started to cry. Danielle was there. We went to the hotel. We started to cry. Next morning, I show up, and I'm like, can you still hear? She goes, let me tell you how well I can hear. I was standing in the lobby, and I said to someone, oh, my gosh, they started the worship. We got to get in there. And they said, no, they haven't. She goes, no, I can hear the music, the worship starting. We got to get into the meeting. And said, no, Joyce, that's just music they play in the lobby all the time. She had never heard music in the lobby in her life. She didn't realize there was music playing. And as while I'm walking into the next session, I hear the Lord say to me, remind me what you were praying for. I was like, I've been praying that the Vineyard become racially diverse. That's not technically what you asked me for. I've been asking that you would open our ears that we could hear. See, in the Bible, physical healing points to spiritual realities. That's why they're called signs. They point somewhere. John says they're signs. I thought that was a sign. So all of a sudden I have all this faith. By the way, the next session, we were talking about immigration, and this woman was speaking, and we had not told her a single thing, what to say, and her whole talk was, do you have eyes to see? Can you see people? And Joyce came up and said, we should pray for people who are blind. I'm like, oh boy. That's an illustration for another day. But greater works than these, says Jesus. You can ask whatever you want in my name, meaning in the spirit of who I am, as you follow me, as you trust in me. Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. When you trust in him with your life, it can calm all the anxieties, but you have to choose to trust him. And it isn't a roadmap game, it's a trust game. Will you yield? Will you submit? Those places that you're anxious because you're not sure if you can trust him. You can trust him. He's a good leader. And then we get to do some pretty cool stuff. We get to be a part of what he is doing in the world. If we want to follow him, if we want to do that stuff. And I think that's the kind of church I want to be in. Who's a part of the greater work of the kingdom in our day and age. Anybody else want to? I think we could be that kind of church. It won't because we're cool, it won't because we're smart. It will only be because we're submitted, we're faithful, and we're brave. And he knows the way. Why don't we stand together?